Hi everyone, this is KnifeFighter22 here. I hope you guys are all well. And welcome to the very interesting game of chess. Today we're going to be looking at Tal's Immortal game. So you can probably imagine, most chess players have an Immortal chess game. This is a chess game they do very, very well in. And this is Mikhail Tal. So looking at a Grandmaster game, which was played by Tal, so it's going to be very, very interesting as he was a very aggressive and sacrificial player. Okay, so he was playing against Bent Larsen. I believe this was to be 1961, but I'll put an annotation if I'm incorrect. Okay, e4, and then we have c5. So we've got sort of a Sicilian setup. This is how Tal usually played against a Sicilian. He didn't like f4 like me, but that's fine. Most grandmasters play knight f3 anyway. d4, and we have an open Sicilian here, and Bent Larsen opts for the Scheveningen variation, which I think actually is classified after the move d6. So then bishop to e3 is the modern variation of this. Knight to f6, just putting pressure on the pawn and on the center as well. You know, getting the knights and pawns out to the center is always good, controlling the 5th rank. And Mikhail Tal goes for f4 here, and you can already see, if we flip the position over, this is quite an overwhelming attack from the white perspective on Bent Larsen. So I always like playing this f4 move, but I guess Tal always played knight f3 first. Bishop to e7, indicating castle queenside. And as soon as Mikhail Tal saw this move, he quickly moved his queen out to f3, which I admire very much, because this bishop to e7 move indicates Bent Larsen will be castling on the king side. So what Mikhail Tal is going to do is he's going to try and intimidate him and castle on the queen side. And this intimidates people because if you have castling on the opposite sides of the board, the games are generally very aggressive because you've got black trying to attack over here, white trying to attack over here, and there's basically fireworks on the board. And Bent Larsen, playing one of the most successfully aggressive and sacrificial players of his generation, he sure is going to be intimidated when he knows a game like that is coming up. But he does castle nonetheless, and Tal goes ahead and castles on the other side. And now we see queen up to c7, so I guess just preparing to connect the rooks. He's not showing what he's going to do with his bishop yet, whether he's going to fianchetto or if he's going to play e5 and get the bishop out this way. We don't know just yet. And then Tal tries to go ahead and attack the queen, and just puts the queen back onto the b8 square. I guess just a nice place for the queen. Maybe ideas of b5 and putting pressure on the queen side over here, obviously where white's king is going to be based. So for an attack there. And now Tal goes ahead with g4. You know, right away you can see that this attack is starting. And Bent Larsen actually plays a very clever move as well here. He plays the move a6. And what this does is, after the knight retreats back to the d4 square, he can now go ahead with his own attack. He trades off the knights first. And then after this he goes ahead with his own attack b5. So this a6 point is supporting the b5 pawn. And what you'll notice is Bent Larsen secretly he's not connected his rooks yet, because he didn't actually want to move this rook. He wanted to keep his rook and his queen on these files, because he's going to storm these pawns down and try and dare to attack Mikhail Tal's king. Okay, so now g5, attacking the knight, and the knight's forced back to d7. So again, this is sort of closing off the bishop a bit, and maybe what Mikhail Tal wanted is, after knight d7, maybe he wanted Bent Larsen to develop his bishop onto b7 and then block. This will block off the queen from being so deadly down the file. But Mikhail Tal doesn't defend like that. He attacks by defending, if that makes sense, or he defends by attacking, as you can see in this case right here. And then bishop up to e3. Sorry, d3. This is always a very useful move, because after this pawn moves, h7 is on the cards, and after this knight has moved from the king side off the f6 square, this queen can then come into h5 and really start to attack. So b4 now, you know, Bent Larsen's not wasting any time attacking himself. And Mikhail Tal takes a good look at this position. Here comes the first really interesting sacrifice from Mikhail Tal. He thinks, yeah, the knight's not really got any good squares to go. a4 is on the rim of the board and completely away from the king side. e2, it's not really going to be able to come quickly. He's going to have to go e2, g3, h5, and by the time that his knight's gone all the way around there to attack, Bent Larsen would have already checkmated Mikhail Tal's king. So Mikhail Tal plays the very interesting move knight up to d5. And you'll notice that well, one of the reasons why I think these kind of moves are so successful is they're so intimidating for the opponent. Just look at this from the black perspective for 1 second. If we flip back a move, yes, knight down to d5. How intimidating from the world champion to see this kind of move and to already tempt you to take the knight. Anyway, Bent Larsen did go ahead and take this knight. He's now a minor piece up. But I think Mikhail's main idea is after takes back, these two bishops, the full force of the bishops, are opened up on the king side. And with these pawns in coordination with his queen and his kingside rook, I think Mikhail's got a very nice attack lined up. Now we see the move f5. This was actually quite a clever move because obviously this bishop is being blunted out on this diagonal. Rook from a to d1, preparing to attack the undefended bishop, and rook to f7, which defends the bishop. And then up to h4, so pawn up to h4. This is really going for an attack now. Mikhail saying, oh, if you're not going to let me attack with my bishop, I'm just going to use the dark squares for my pawns and attack with this bishop. So now bishop to b7. As I said, this was probably what Mikhail might have wanted, is to block the queen off from this file, as it's going to be a bit blocked in by the knight over here. But this is actually a pretty good move for Bent Larsen as well. Just bear in mind that this pawn here is not well defended currently, only defended by the queen, and behind there is sitting the queen on the same diagonal as the bishop, so Bent Larsen could have some tactics there. Also, obviously, if you got a piece onto e6 or whatever, then it wouldn't be able to be taken. Now we see bishop takes f5. Basically, this wins a pawn for white, but if rook takes here, then obviously rook takes e7. I think what Bent Larsen wanted to try and do was try and eliminate that light square bishop of white's, because it was going to get very powerful in the attack. And now we see knight up to e5, and this is very interesting. Obviously, if bishop takes here, then pawn takes, and pawn takes can't take back, because basically the whole idea is a pawn on f4 is pinned. So obviously, if here takes right away, then the queen is lost. Just wondering, if any of you didn't know why Mikhail didn't go ahead and take the knight. So queen e4 is played, and now we see some interesting ideas. After queen to f8, Bent Larsen gave some material back. So Mikhail did go ahead and take that material, but now Bent Larsen can get some counterplay down the f-file. So we see rook up to f4, attacking the queen, queen back to e3, and then we see rook to f3. So really starting to attack the queen. This queen's moved 3 times now. And now, after all of this, queen takes e7 can be played. So he chooses to trade off the rooks, and then queen takes e3, because this queen was the only defender of that rook sitting there on f3. And now d takes e5. So Mikhail is really, Bent Larsen is really starting to come back on Mikhail Tal. Mikhail Tal, tactics master though, he just uses another tactic. He's using a pin again. So this pawn is pinned if pawn takes bishop, rook takes queen. And now we see rook to d8, really starting to attack this pawn here. And Mikhail actually doesn't, he plays rook takes e5 here, so attacking the queen. Queen goes off to e6, and now we see queen up to f4. Now this is a very interesting point in the game, because this pawn is not defended. It's insufficiently defended now. So what Mikhail is doing is he's basically luring into a trap, because there is a mate if the pawn gets taken. I think, actually I can't, sorry guys, I can't remember what the checkmate was. But then rook over to f8. Anyway, that's why it wasn't taken. I will put a link into what that checkmate actually was. But rook f8, yes, and then the queen goes off to e4, so attacking down the e-file. And now b3, so basically a sacrifice to get one of these files open. A takes b3 because I think Bent Larsen wanted to get Mikhail into a fix. If here takes, then he can get some counterplay with queen c7. So that's why a takes b3, this a file is a lot harder to attack down, as it's not really in the game. Rook f1 check, king d2, and then queen to b4 check. So, but after c3, there's not really any more ways that Bent Larsen can sufficiently attack. So Mikhail can go ahead with this checkmate now. After queen over to e6, we have a very interesting line. Bishop to c5 right away. And unfortunately for black, unfortunately for Bent Larsen, there is a checkmate after queen takes c5. So we see rook to e8, check, rook to f8, and now can you see the move? Can you see the winning move, guys? Yes, the winning move is queen to e6, and basically after queen to e6, the king has to go to h8, and yeah, you might be thinking, oh, if rook takes f8, queen takes f8, and black will be better. It's got this bishop for these extra pawns, but no, the winning move is queen to f7, and basically rook is pinned, so rook can't take the queen there. The king can't move at all. So yeah, there's no way to defend the mate basically, because the king can't move back to g8. Then there's obviously going to be rook takes f8 mate, queen takes f8, and queen takes f8 is checkmate. And there's no way that can be defended because this is a dark square, the bishop's on a light square. These pawns can't be moved because these pawns are going to be attacked. And even if h6 and the king tries to escape, then g6 would just completely blunt out any sort of attack, and the king will be checkmated. Okay, so thanks so much for watching the video, everybody. I've been KnifeFighter22. I really hope you enjoyed that. I found that a very inspiring game. So please subscribe. I'll be doing a lot more Mikhail soon, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye, everyone.